Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to talk about just what's going on in the retail supply chains and stores using item level RFID, and I have a distinct honor to be joined on a panel with some of the top retailers in the world. And let me quickly introduce them. John Cooper is Senior Director of Merchandising and Supply Chain, Applied Analytics Transformation at George Clothing, okay, at Asda. Mattias Sjostedt is the Product Owner of In-Stock Optimization at H&M Group headquarters. And then Johan Stenstrom is Supply Chain Developer at Stadium. And so thank you again for attending, and if you don't mind, we'll just jump right in. So. First, if we just start with John, you work your way to Johan and Mattias. Why don't you guys talk a little bit about your business and how you're utilizing item level RFID today?
Good morning, everyone. Well, we're fairly new to the RFID process. We have been looking at it for about 10 years, and over the last 2 years, we've been doing 2 pilots. Those pilots have been really essential in actually understanding what RFID could deliver. So we've had some challenges in Asda where we've seen poor availability. 50% of our customers who complain it's around not having that size level, and obviously we're losing a lot of money because we're not giving the customers what they want. So we're fairly new to the process. We've kicked off a pilot, we've had brilliant results, and then we're looking to do a rollout in Q1 next year.
Okay, great. Johan.
Yeah. Hi, Johan from Stadium, and we're a sporting goods company. We sell about 40 million pieces each year. So you get an idea of the size of the company. And we've been on this RFID journey for about 3 years or something like that. And we started, the journey started with us thinking that we have control over our inventory accuracy, but actually things weren't adding up, and we were getting feedback from our staff that we can't have that inventory accuracy that we say we have. And actually, when we were looking at the numbers, seeing we are actually measuring the financial accuracy, not the inventory accuracy. So we went from an understanding of having 99-point inventory accuracy down to realizing we have 70% inventory accuracy. And then it was game on, kind of seeing we need to do something and look at what technology we should use. And ended up with RFID.
And when you talk about inventory accuracy, Johan, you're talking about style, size, and color.
Yeah.
Basically, as an example, rather than the total number of units. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It is down to the SKU level. We had several instances of thinking we have 2 medium and 2 large on the sales floor, but it turned out using RFID, we instantly saw, okay, we have 4 large. We have 4 mediums, but they are on the back stock. Nothing on the sales floor, and so the customer couldn't get to them. And when we turned on replenishment and seeing this, we could see on the day that we turned the replenishment on, we could see that in our sales figure on the day. So it was a game changer.
Great story. Mattias, how about you? I mean,
yeah. Thanks for it. To me. So I'm Mattias, coming from the H&M Group. Pretty big retailer. We have presence in about 74 markets, around 5,000 stores. Our journey started back in 2013. We did the first pilot. Not a good pilot. Well, it was a good pilot, but we got some good learnings from it and realized that we are not mature enough. Started off in 2017 with a new pilot. Much more mature, and I think the market in general was much more mature, especially for retailers. So very good pilot, and then we kicked off a global rollout 2018, and I have to say it's been a pretty successful rollout. We're in the end of it now, so not so many markets left to do, to be honest. And going back to the reasons, I mean, I can just concur with my fellow colleagues here that the belief of having accuracy was there, but in reality it wasn't, right? So we're taking a lot of decisions based on an inventory accuracy that might be down to 70% of what we believe. So not hard to get the business case on that one.
Yeah, so you've got a 5,000 store chain, a 180 store chain, and a 450 store chain. That the commonality here is that inventory accuracy, there was a realization of it, right? And maybe talk a little bit, Mattias, we'll start with you, about just how did you guys define what those pain points were? How did you come to grips with the fact that how you've been operating maybe wasn't exactly a picture of what was going on?
Yeah, I mean, looking at the use cases for RFID, I mean, there are numerous, right? But the first one is, of course, making sure that a customer can find what they are looking for. So first one was secure size availability in stores. And how do we do that? Well, of course, we need to implement some kind of inventory solution. And of course, make sure that all the routines are set in store and that, all the overall process is also supporting it in the company.
John, how about you? I mean, you guys have come into this a little differently because of the background with grocery and everything else.
The reason why we wanted to do it, we could see in our stores over a 12-month period when we did the stock count that we were losing 30% of the inventory net, so our systems and our physical counts were completely different. We could see it in store visits where we could see empty arms, but systematically we had the stock. And then we started looking at customer complaints, where we were looking at complaints where customers saying you didn't have this, and then we could see clearly that on our stock file we did, but we weren't doing anything about it because physically the stock wasn't there, but the system said it was. So that kind of drove our journey. So we had, when we were doing the pilots, some real specific things that we wanted to look at. So we looked at two things specifically around if we could actually get stock, do the RFID pilot and then put stock back into those stores, what would the benefits be? We saw 50% of those out of stocks replenished, sold within 2 weeks. So really, really significant. A bit like Stadium, we saw a complete uplift in our sales over that period. We set up some control stores. So we saw some really interesting things. And then the other thing that we saw from the pilot, which we weren't expecting, we set up, obviously with a supermarket, it's very busy because you've got food, you've got grocery, home shopping. We do a lot of stuff around click and collect for other retailers. So there is a conflict of interest in our stores. The other thing that we were surprised to see, but pleased we did, we set up the front of store being a location and the back of house being a location. And we started measuring how quickly out of stocks went from the back of the store after they were delivered to the shop floor for customers to buy. And then we also looked at how quickly new lines were got on the floor. And obviously in fashion, days and hours matter if you don't get it available to customers. So we got a real sight line as to how quickly, when we deliver something to a store, how quickly it's available to customers. It didn't make good reading, but that's a benefit now that we're going to have with RFID when we do the whole rollout. And I think the last thing, Dean, that we saw is when we looked at the pilots, although we knew that we had a stock inaccuracy problem over a period of time, we didn't really know what was driving it. So the pilots that we've done on RFID have really given us a really clear focus to actually look at what the root causes of that inaccuracy actually is.
Yeah, the root cause component is a consistency across all of you guys, is getting to that measurement point. Johan, talk a little bit maybe about what you guys found and some of the examples. I think some of the anecdotes that you've shared with us have been quite interesting. So
I could share an anecdote that would summarize the journey almost, and it was the first day, the first hour of the pilot that we did, and being the project manager of the pilot, I were nervous in what are we getting into here? What kind of journey are we going on? And so we're standing out on the sales floor, first hour, with an RFID reader, and just monitoring the situation and seeing a customer approaching one of our sales staffs, and she were asking for a pair of skates, and the sales staff said, okay, we have this, but I can't find it here where the skates are. It got to be in the back stock. So she went back to the back stock searching, and I thought this is a good time to test this theory. So I had my RFID reader and approached this lady and said, what were you looking for? And she had this, I want this, but in another size. So I took the RFID reader, scanned the price label, and I could see the size she were looking for. It was present, but on the sales floor. We couldn't see it, so then I would press this function that says Geiger on this size, and it starts beeping, and that means, okay, it is somewhere here, so it's not in the back stock. And it was like, beep, 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 beep. It's on the other side of the aisle, so probably a customer tried it on and just left it somewhere. So I made my first sale that day, first and only, almost. And she was really happy. And as she was walking out, the sales staff were coming back. We can't find it. It's walking out the door right now. And then I thought, it's going to be a good journey. It really proved the case.
Pretty practical.
Really is. And talking to the store managers now, they say they sell about 3 to 4 items due to the Geiger per day per store. That adds up. Yeah.
Interesting. In just to summarize, you guys have implemented and are in the process of implementing source tagging. So the price tickets are coming with RFID on them, or you're applying them. In your case, Johan, in the DC. You're using handhelds, simple Android-based handheld, and an RFID scanner in the store to do count. So a pretty light footprint is what you've got. Talk a little bit, we'll start with you, John, about what happened during COVID. I mean, you guys were in the middle of a bunch of things during the whole COVID shutdown, and each of you have a unique situation I think would be beneficial to the audience. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenges we had in COVID were pretty well common in retail, but the things that we found were we had to utilize the stock we had because our supply chains were broken. Because of COVID shutdowns in markets, we didn't really have a line of sight about what we were going to get when, so we had to try and make all the stock that we had in our organization, put it in the right place. So kind of availability was key, and therefore your stocking accuracy is key, because if you haven't got the stock that you want and you're trying to make sure it's in the right place, if you haven't got the right stock accuracy, then it's very, very difficult. The other thing that was really, really important is what we found is customers were very challenging, or put another way, their expectations went up significantly. So whereas customers were okay if you're out of stock on something, we saw a step change in COVID, that frustrations of a customer, if you couldn't give them the size, level, availability that they wanted, they wouldn't come back to you again. And then what we also could see is, driven by COVID, when we had some quite significant out of stocks, it started to impact the basket, because obviously with a supermarket, customers are putting up to 4 or 5 clothing lines in a basket at any point in time. So if you haven't got a core line available to customers in the size they want, it puts at risk that complete basket, and they might not come back.
Yeah, so very interesting that your comment about consumers change their expectation.
Completely.
During COVID, and I think we all experienced that as consumers, and so very interesting. Johan, how about you? During COVID, you were in the middle of the rollout.
Yeah. So that was bad news for the rollout, but the board said almost stopped all of the big projects, but RFID said we said this, we see the value of it, we're going to keep going. So we did a rollout over Teams meetings, you couldn't fly to Norway or Finland, so yeah. No, we weren't allowed to fly, so we set up meetings and described, and then we sent them out to do an inventory, and they'll come back and we'll talk some more, and they went out, and it really worked, and I would say one thing would be that it is an Android phone. It's not like the old scanners we have with no interface where you press a lot of buttons. So it was easy, and it worked quite well. Not optimal, but it worked. We were able to continue rolling out.
Did you guys shut down stores? Why don't you share, and how did that work? Because I'm going to talk about that with Mattias, who had that on a major scale, but what about you guys?
But in Sweden and Scandinavia, we didn't quite shut down, but we have restrictions on how many people would be allowed into the store. And at that point, we can't have, one of the good things was that we knew what we had on the sales floor. So the few people that would get into the store, they would find what they were looking for. And they didn't have to ask staff because we needed distance. So that was a good thing.
Yeah. Mattias, thousands of stores in dozens of markets. So what did it look like for COVID, and how did you use RFID?
Well, it was a catastrophe for everyone, right?
What's that?
It was a catastrophe for everyone.
Yeah.
And similar to Johan, I mean, we're also in the middle of rollout. Also try the team's way, which sometimes work good, sometimes not, but still we could recover. And I think for the complete H&M group, I mean, going more into online, of course, and then not being able to utilize the stock you had in stores for obvious reasons. The stores were closed, or you couldn't get the manpower because they were sick, right? So what do you do? And I have to say, without RFID and having that accuracy in the stores, now of course we couldn't do it always, but at least maybe we could do it a couple of times a month. Then I'm not sure how it would have looked without that, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, you guys shut down stores for a good period of time, and then you'd have to bring them back alive again.
Yeah, I mean, for example, in the UK, of course, a lot of stores were closed for a very long time, and I mean, how do you get back, right? The garments are old season, maybe. So how do you utilize them? And since online selling was boosting, but you can't get it out of the store, right? So it's a huge challenge.
During COVID and coming out of it, how did your associates view the technology? You know, did they find it to be essential or useful, or you know, any comment from you guys about that during coming out of COVID, really, or coming out of the shutdowns? And so,
I mean, I think back again to, I mean, when the store opened. Now it could maybe only be for 2 weeks because then there was another lockdown. Yeah. But at least during that time, if people came back, I mean, of course you knew what you had, right? You know what you could sell. So that's the fantastic way with RFID.
Yeah. I mean, you guys have talked about, all three of you have talked about the customer service focus. Or, I mean, the technology is not there for the IT organization. It's there for servicing customers. And so, you know, whether it be a pilot or in the middle of a rollout or in a rollout, describe a little bit about what kind of customer service advantages you've seen, you know, the consumer themselves by using, you know, by you guys using this technology. Yeah, any of you. Yeah.
Well, what we found on the pilot, because this was new territory, we obviously could use the device to tell customers that it was in stock, which we couldn't usually do in a supermarket. We could obviously locate the stock, and then we used it as an opportunity to turn on search from store, so that if there was an out of stock that was real, we tested the capability to say, right, it's not in this store, but it's in a store 2 miles away, or we integrate it with their technology that the customer could actually see it's online. So we completely changed our service proposition overnight just to be not only availability, but to showcase where they could buy it, other options or opportunities there were, and then obviously used it to get our customers to work across channels, because obviously with the supermarket we're very much into retail, into stores, and less as an e-commerce player at this stage, where only 20% of our sales are e-com. So one of the things we wanted to test was how can we use RFID to switch on all those other capabilities. The other thing that we also wanted to do is kind of learn some lessons around pick from store, because at the moment we offer click and collect. Huge opportunity for us to actually, when a customer orders online, we actually pick it from store. So as a supermarket, when you're getting a lot of customers in regularly every week, and then sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, you know, in the future we're looking to deliver market-leading proposition where a customer could order some clothing products online and then come in to do their grocery shop and then walk out an hour later. So we looked at not only just how we could deal with the stock inaccuracy and driving better performance, but what it would mean from the customer
Really
proposition
changes
side.
that customer experience.
Completely,
isn't it?
Dean, yeah, completely.
Yeah, how about you guys? Anything on that you'd like to add?
I would agree with everything you said. And one thing to add would be that pre-RFID, if a customer would come and ask for something, you would always have that uncertainty. I think it's in the backstock, or I think it's somewhere here. But with RFID, the staff has an entirely different confidence in, okay, it is in the backstock, or we don't have it. And that also saves up time, not having to go search for it. You can have a confidence to say if it's there or not.
Yeah. Agree, definitely. I mean, just the fact that you could say what's actually in the store is amazing, but also puts like a pressure on the store staff, right? Because the technique is fantastic, but you have to have the fundamentals in the store. And that's, I would say, the first thing that we secure when we roll out the market is that all the normal store routines with faulty items you have store transfers between stores, transfers back to DC, all of this needs to work. Because it doesn't, it will not work with RFID as good, right? Still work, but not as good.
Great comments. Okay, last question is, a number of folks in the audience are likely retailers who are looking at changing the way they run their business, move into an item level world instead of a SKU level world. So what are the two things that you'd pass on to them and encourage them to look at if they're starting on this journey for item level RFID? And Mattias, we'll start with you.
I was already talking about the fundamentals, so let's start with that one. So it's great technique, but it's quite simple. I mean, anyone can probably buy a solution and install it, but everything else needs to work as well. Then, of course, assess your business in which of the use cases that are most beneficial for you guys. For us, it was size availability, but now, of course, we're looking into more.
Johan.
I would say pre-RFID, go look at data quality and product quality before you start. And if you're anything like us, when you're finished, you do it again. Data quality is so important. The other thing would be when you go for a pilot, keep it simple, do inventory, don't go for everything, and do it with quality all the way through. That would be, we hit some hard bumps on that road.
Yeah, if you get a chance, you talk to Johan afterwards about the data quality comment. That's a loaded comment, okay? And it was very fascinating to walk through that. So, John, how about you? Two things that you think you'd pass along.
I think there's slightly more than two, if I may, Dean. I think so I would definitely recommend doing a pilot. It gives you valuable lessons, and then when you're setting up the pilot, work out what are the business problems you want to resolve, what are the opportunities, because there's more opportunities than you think. It's not just about sorting out a business problem, and then future-proof it. So what do you really want your proposition to be, and how can you use RFID to deliver that, I think would be my recommendations. And then measure. Measure every KPI that you can in those pilots, because a lot of the step changes and things you learn, it's actually in the detail. And it's surprising what you learn. A really good example is we didn't actually know how many labels we had on any product, any POS. We didn't, no one knew. But we found out we had to know. So we've used an RFID to reduce the number of labels, which is going to save us millions of pounds. So it's all about the details, because it's surprising with your own individual operating models what you can actually learn and how you can push it.
Yeah, fascinating. So great comments. I'm going to open it up for questions now, if anybody has a question for the panel. Yep.
Good morning. Thank you for this panel. Gail from Blue Yonder, I have a question. We often hear that RFID is expensive versus the return on investment. It sounds like you have great return on investment. Have you segmented the categories you tag or don't tag for better return on investment or not? Or do you tag everything?
Mattias, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I can start.
Okay.
I mean, you have the, what we say, low-hanging fruit, right? The normal garments is pretty easy, and in our case, we started by putting the chip in the price tag. Maybe in the future we'll put it somewhere else, but at least what we do right now. But of course, there are things like beauty that is not as easy, but we're working together with, for example, SML on finding solution for how to tag these hard-to-tag goods.
Yeah. Yeah, Johan, or?
I would say...
Describe what's in your store, first off. They might not be familiar with it.
Yeah. So it's sporting equipment, fashion, that kind of thing. Everything from shoelaces to a kayak. So it's a wide range. And our we are aiming for 100%. It's always going to be things that are difficult. But our philosophy is, what does an error cost? It really, when we try to look at an error, it almost always leads to an unhappy customer and a loss of sales. And what's that? That is really bad, of course. So we are aiming for as close as 100% as possible.
John, you've got the broadest spectrum. So
yeah. So Gail, I think the answer would be no. We haven't done any segmentation. The reason why we haven't done that is that when we did the pilot, there was no themes around where that stock inaccuracy was being lost. So there wasn't anything you could conclude other than if you've got a continuity line that runs for, say, 12 months a year, you would lose a bigger amount of your stock because it runs for longer in relation to the sales it has. And then the other thing is if you future-proof what you want to use RFID for, and then you take a kind of a really integrated multi-channel approach, you want to do everything because otherwise you're going to stop and start, and it makes it very, very difficult for store colleagues to do it any other way. The question around is it cheap or is it expensive, it's all about what benefits you're going to get. And so for us, if you've got the level of accuracy in our business, it's that customer proposition we're going to improve, and the sales and the profit you're going to be drive because we'll know that stock's in the shop where today it's not in the shop. So it's all around identifying those benefits. And then it's really interesting, the label example I shared with you. So there is a cost to obviously the solution, but we're going to save millions of pounds on cost of goods by reducing the number of labels on our POS. So it points you down directions that you can offset some of the costs of actually the implementation with what you can save across the operating model.
Great example. Other questions? Yep.
Hi, a question really for John, actually, directly to you. In terms of your price point for George and also your stock densities, did you have any challenges around margin and around actually on the technology side making it work in your stores?
We obviously, with the pilot, one of the things we wanted to get out of doing the pilot was how it fitted in technically. So we've done that, and then what we did as part of that process, we're going through a program called Future, which is transforming the business. So when we were doing the pilot, we were looking at how it integrated today. Because we've been doing it for 10 years, we were pretty well sure that we knew how to kind of integrate it into our legacy world. But we also used that opportunity to make sure that what we were doing would actually fit into the organisation and what Future was doing. In terms of so we have got some kind of low margin, low price products, but it's all about in the benefits. If you're selling a kid's polo shirt at £4, customers expect to see it. So it's kind of horses for courses that you have to then look at it as an overall, because actually it might be that in those product categories that you're losing the customers. You need to improve that proposition. So paying for the additional label and doing it at source, which is where we're doing, which is slightly different to the H&M model, is the viable way of doing it.
Great answers. Any other questions? Well, John, Johan, Mattias, thank you so much. You guys are leaders in the industry, and appreciate you sharing with the audience today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.